The billionaire CEO kept seeing a boy who looked like him on YouTube, not realizing it was his son. "You can't be here. You need to leave. Now. Natalie, please. Just let me explain." "Explain what, Julian?" "That you saw a few YouTube videos and suddenly want to play dad. That after 11 years of building your billion-dollar empire, you're ready to disrupt my son's life because you feel guilty." "He's my son too." "No. He's the child you never knew about because you walked away. You don't get to show up now." But that conversation came later. 6 hours earlier, Julian Westwood sat in a boardroom on the 47th floor of his Manhattan headquarters, about to see his son's face for the first time. He just didn't know it yet. His marketing director pulled up a presentation about youth influencers driving their sales. "Sir, this creator has revolutionized our engagement with younger demographics. Miles Mindful makes 9 million subscribers. An 11-year-old from Boston who teaches art therapy through his channel. When he featured our tablets, we saw a 47% spike in sales." Julian's world stopped. Because there on the screen, blown up 6 feet wide, was a boy with his exact eyes. Not similar. Identical. The same copper-flecked hazel eyes his grandmother used to call autumn caught in amber. The same sharp jawline. The same widow's peak. Even the way the boy tilted his head when concentrating. "Who is this kid?" Julian's voice came out rough. "Miles Harper. 11 years old. Lives in Boston with his mom. No father in the picture. Boston. 11 years old. No father. My last name." Julian felt the room spin. Everything he thought he knew about his life was about to shatter. And 3,000 miles away, I had no idea that the secret I had protected for 11 years was about to explode. This is the story of how one YouTube thumbnail destroyed and rebuilt 3 lives. Stay with me. My name is Natalie Harper. I'm an art therapist in Boston, specializing in childhood trauma and PTSD. I work with kids who have seen too much, survived too much, needed someone to believe they could heal. Every day I help children transform their pain into something beautiful. I teach them that broken things can be remade into art. That wounds can become wisdom. I built this career from nothing, one client at a time, one healed heart at a time. And then there's Miles. My son. My entire world. At 11 years old, he has 9 million people following his YouTube channel where he teaches other kids how to create art from recycled materials, how to manage anxiety through creativity, how to turn difficult emotions into something productive and beautiful. He inherited his father's analytical mind, his problem-solving approach, his ability to break down complex concepts into simple steps. But everything else, the kindness, the empathy, the gentle spirit, that came from my side. That came from the values I instilled in him from the day he was born. Feel deeply. Create bravely. Heal generously. Love is strength, not weakness. Miles has no idea who his father is. He's asked, of course. Kids always do. "Mom, why don't I have a dad? Other kids have dads. Where's mine?" And I always told him the same thing. "Your dad and I separated before you were born. He doesn't know about you. He lives far away. Our family is perfect just as it is, you and me." And Miles, being the extraordinary child he is, always accepted that answer. He'd nod, hug me, and say, "You're right, Mom. We're a pretty great team. We built a beautiful life in our Boston brownstone. Just the two of us against the world." Our home is filled with his art projects, half-finished sculptures on every surface, paintings covering the walls, recycled materials organized in bins waiting to be transformed into something new. The kitchen where we make pancakes every Saturday morning and talk about everything from quantum physics to feelings. The studio I converted from the spare bedroom where Miles films his videos, natural light pouring through the large windows, art supplies organized on shelves he built himself when he was 9. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. It was 6:47 in the evening. I was in my home office reviewing notes for a client, a 9-year-old boy processing his father's abandonment through sculpture. The irony wasn't lost on me. Miles was in his room editing his latest video, his door open so I could hear his running commentary. Okay, this transition needs to be smoother. The music should fade here, not here. Yeah, that's better. He talked to himself while he worked, thinking through problems out loud, a habit he'd had since he was small. My email pinged. I glanced at it absently, expecting something work-related. Then I saw the name. Julian Westwood. A name I hadn't seen in my inbox for 11 years. A name that still had the power to make my breath catch, my heart stutter, my carefully constructed world tremble. My hand started shaking before I even opened the message. The email was short. 8 words that threatened to destroy everything. Natalie, I saw your son's YouTube channel. I see myself in every thumbnail. We need to talk. I sat frozen, staring at those words. He knew. Somehow Julian had found Miles' channel. He had seen the thumbnails. He had recognized his own features in our son's face. And now he wanted to talk. As if he had any right. As if 11 years of silence could be bridged with an email. As if the man who called my life's work playing with crayons for pocket change deserved access to the extraordinary human I had raised from that wreckage. Mom. You okay? Miles stood in the doorway of my office, his brown hair sticking up at odd angles from lying on the floor while editing. He had his father's analytical eyes, but my gentle spirit. The perfect combination of our best qualities, untainted by Julian's ruthless ambition. I'm fine, sweetheart. How's the new video coming? Almost done. I'm showing kids how to make worry stones from painted rocks. Remember when you taught me that technique when I was little? When I used to get anxious about stuff? I remember. You were 7 and worried about your first day at a new school. Yeah. And you showed me how to paint smooth stones with calming colors and patterns. How holding something beautiful that I made with my own hands could help me feel grounded. Miles smiled. I think other kids need that too. Especially now. Everyone seems so stressed all the time. You have such a good heart. I managed to keep my voice steady even though my own heart was racing. I learned from the best. Miles moved closer, his expression shifting to concern. Are you sure you're okay? You look sad. Did something happen? I marveled, not for the first time, at my son's emotional intelligence. He had inherited that from my side of the family. The ability to read people, to care about their feelings, to value kindness over achievement. Just some work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Mom. Ethan's voice took on the serious tone that always made him seem older than 11. You always tell me it's okay to talk about things that bother us. That keeping feelings inside makes them worse. He had me there. I had raised him too well. You're right. I'm just thinking about some difficult choices I made a long time ago. What kind of choices? I studied my son's face. Julian's face, but softer, kinder, more open. Should I tell him? Should I prepare him for the possibility that his father might suddenly want to be involved after 11 years of absence? Choices about family. About what's best for the people we love. Miles sat down on the floor next to my chair, the way he always did when we had important conversations. Is this about my dad? My breath caught. What makes you say that? I'm 11, Mom. I'm not stupid. I know other kids have dads and mine isn't around. I used to think maybe he died or something, but you always say isn't in our lives instead of is gone. Which means he's alive somewhere. You're very perceptive. So is this about him? Did something happen? I don't know yet. Maybe. I need to think about some things first. Miles nodded, accepting this. Can I tell you something? Always. I don't care, by the way. About him, I mean. Sometimes I wonder what he's like, but you're the best mom ever. And Grandma was amazing before she died. And I have Uncle Marcus and Aunt Sophie. Our family is good exactly as it is. Tears stung my eyes. You really mean that? Of course I mean it. Why would I want someone in my life who didn't want to be here? That would be like wanting someone to like my videos because I begged them to, not because they actually thought my stuff was cool. You taught me that, Mom. People either choose you or they don't. And if they don't choose you, that says everything about them and nothing about you. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. Miles grinned. It's a blessing and a curse. Now finish your work so we can watch that documentary about ocean conservation you promised. After Miles went back to his room, I sat alone in my office with Julian's email burning on my screen. 6 hours before he sent that message, Julian's entire world had collapsed in a Manhattan boardroom. He told me this later, during one of our late-night conversations that felt dangerously like the ones we used to have. Minus the trust. Minus the innocence. Plus 11 years of scar tissue neither of us could ignore. The meeting was supposed to be routine. His marketing team wanted to review their digital strategy. Julian had sat through 1,000 meetings like this one. Young executives with tablets and presentations, explaining algorithms and engagement metrics, using words like synergy and disruption. He barely paid attention anymore. He would nod, ask a few pointed questions, approve budgets with the stroke of a pen. His mind was usually elsewhere, calculating, strategizing, always 3 moves ahead. But not that day. Sir, we've analyzed the demographic data and we're seeing unprecedented engagement from Gen Z consumers through influencer partnerships and YouTube integration. Daniel, his marketing director, pulled up a presentation on the large screen. Traditional advertising is dead. The future is content creators who have built authentic relationships with their audiences. Show me the metrics. Julian's tone was bored. Daniel clicked to the next slide and that's when everything changed. These creators have more influence over purchasing decisions than traditional celebrities. Take this channel for example. Miles Mindful Makes. The creator is 11 years old, teaches art therapy and emotional wellness through creative projects, and has 9 million subscribers. When he featured a Westwood tablet in one of his tutorials about digital art for anxiety management, we saw a 47% spike in sales to the educational sector within 2 weeks. Julian told me later that he couldn't hear anything after that. The boardroom had gone silent around him. Or maybe it was just the rushing of blood in his ears. Because there on the screen, blown up 6 feet wide, was a thumbnail image of a boy. A boy with Julian's eyes. Not just similar eyes. The exact same copper-flecked hazel that Julian's grandmother used to comment on every family gathering. The same shade that Julian saw every morning in the mirror when he bothered to look at himself anymore. The boy had the same sharp cheekbones, the same slight widow's peak, the same way of holding his head tilted slightly left when concentrating. Even in a still image, Julian could see himself. The boy was holding up a painted rock, his face lit with pride and pure joy. Behind him was a studio filled with art supplies and colorful creations. But Julian couldn't see any of that. All he could see was his own face, 11 years younger, staring back at him from a screen. Who is this kid? The words came out rougher than Julian intended. Daniel looked surprised by the intensity of the question. Miles Harper. He's this 11-year-old prodigy from Boston who builds incredible art projects and teaches emotional regulation through creativity. His content is incredibly authentic and wholesome. He talks about processing feelings, managing anxiety, turning pain into art. Brands are desperate to work with him because his audience is so loyal and his message is so positive. Julian felt the world tilt. Boston. Harper. My last name. 11 years old. The exact age a child would be if conceived right before Julian left for Tokyo. Pull up more of his videos. Sir, we have a lot of content to cover in this meeting. Daniel gestured to his presentation. I said pull up more of his videos. Julian's voice carried an edge that made everyone in the room freeze. He never raised his voice. Never showed emotion. Never deviated from the agenda. But something in his tone made Daniel comply without further question. Video after video filled the screen. Each thumbnail showed the same boy. Creating a sculpture from bottle caps. Teaching kids how to make vision boards for their goals. Explaining color theory and how different colors affect mood. Building a terrarium ecosystem from recycled materials. In every single image, Julian saw himself. The same build, the same mannerisms, the same intense focus when working on projects. One video showed the boy explaining how creating art could help process grief. Julian watched 30 seconds of it and his chest tightened. The boy's voice was still high with youth, but it carried an emotional depth that was startling. My grandma died 2 years ago, and it was the hardest thing I've ever been through. The boy's eyes were serious, sincere. I couldn't talk about how sad I was. The words wouldn't come out. But my mom showed me that I could put those feelings into art instead. So I made this memory sculpture using things that reminded me of her. And every time I look at it, I remember the happy times, not just the sad ending. Julian told me he had to grip the edge of the conference table to keep from falling apart right there in front of his entire team. Does anyone know anything about his family? He tried to keep his voice casual. Rachel, the social media specialist, pulled up her notes. Not much. He's super private about his personal life, which honestly makes the brand even more authentic. We know he lives in Boston with his mom. No dad in the picture. The mom runs the channel but stays completely off camera. Very protective of their privacy. They turn down most sponsorship deals unless they align with the channel's values about emotional wellness and creativity. No father in the picture. Boston. 11 years old. Harper. My last name. Julian felt like he'd been punched in the chest. I need detailed information on this channel. Everything. When it started, how it grew, any personal information that's publicly available. Sir, is everything all right? Daniel ventured carefully. Fine. Just intrigued by the metrics. This meeting is over. Send me your full presentation by end of day. His team filed out slowly, confused by the abrupt dismissal. Julian heard them whispering in the hallway, but he didn't care. The moment the door closed, he was alone with the image of the boy still frozen on the screen. His son. He had a son. Julian told me he sat there for 20 minutes, just staring at Miles' face. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and searched for my name. Natalie Harper, Boston. He found me easily. Dr. Natalie Harper, licensed art therapist, specializing in childhood trauma and PTSD. My faculty photo showed a woman he both recognized and didn't. I looked the same, he said, but different. The softness of youth had given way to a quiet strength. I wore my hair longer now, dark waves falling past my shoulders with a few silver threads I'd earned. There were fine lines at the corners of my eyes that spoke of laughter and tears in equal measure. But I had the same gentle smile, the same warmth he had once taken for granted. Julian spent the next 4 hours in his office. He ignored calls. He canceled meetings. He did something he hadn't done in over a decade. He watched YouTube videos. Miles' channel had hundreds of uploads. Julian started with the oldest ones. Videos from 4 years ago when Miles was just 7 years old. A little boy with missing front teeth and enthusiasm that couldn't be contained, showing other kids how to make worry stones from painted rocks. Hi everyone. Miles' young voice rang out. Today I'm going to show you how to make worry stones. These are really helpful when you're feeling anxious or scared. My mom taught me this when I was worried about starting at a new school. You take smooth stones and paint them with colors and patterns that make you feel calm. Then when you're stressed, you hold the stone and remember that you made something beautiful with your own hands. And that helps you remember you're strong enough to handle hard things. Julian watched video after video, watching his son grow up on a screen. 7-year-old Miles building his first terrarium. 8-year-old Miles explaining how drawing mandalas could help with focus. 9-year-old Miles creating a vision board and talking about setting goals. 10-year-old Miles making a memory box for his grandmother who had passed away. And now 11-year-old Miles with 9 million subscribers and a presence that was magnetic even through a screen. In every video, Julian saw pieces of himself. The analytical mind. The problem-solving approach. The way Miles broke down complex concepts into understandable parts. But he also saw things that weren't him. A kindness in how Miles encouraged his viewers. A patience when explaining difficult ideas. A genuine warmth and emotional openness that Julian had lost somewhere along the way to building his empire. That was me. Natalie. That was my influence. The parts of Miles that weren't inherited but taught. The values I had instilled in him from birth. Be kind. Be patient. Lift others up. Success means helping people, not stepping on them. Your worth isn't measured by your achievements but by the size of your heart. Julian told me he cried watching those videos. Sitting in his billion-dollar office overlooking Manhattan, crying like he hadn't cried since he was a child. Because he saw what he had missed. Not just milestones and birthdays, but the entire formation of a human being. A brilliant, kind, emotionally intelligent human being who had grown up without knowing his father existed. The comment sections of Miles' videos were filled with praise. Miles, you helped me so much when my parents got divorced. Thank you for teaching me it's okay to feel sad. You're the nicest person on YouTube. My daughter watches your videos every day and you've taught her more about managing her anxiety than her therapist did. You inspire me to be a better person. 9 million people loved this boy. 9 million people had watched him grow up. And Julian had missed all of it. He found videos where Miles mentioned his family in passing. My mom and I built this together. My mom says mistakes are just learning opportunities. My mom taught me that helping people is more important than being the best at something. Always my mom. Never a father. Never even a reference to one. Julian told me that's when the full weight hit him. I had been pregnant when he left. Or I got pregnant right before he left. And I had never told him. I had made the choice to raise our son alone, to build a life that didn't include Julian in any way. He found my university email address and stared at it for 20 minutes. What do you say to a woman you abandoned 11 years ago? How do you ask if the child you just discovered, YouTube, is yours? How do you admit that everything you thought mattered, everything you sacrificed love for, turned out to be hollow and meaningless? Julian typed and deleted a dozen messages. Some were angry. Some were pleading. Some tried to explain himself. In the end, he sent the simplest one. Natalie, I saw your son's YouTube channel. I see myself in every thumbnail. We need to talk. Then he waited. He told me those 6 hours before I responded were the longest of his life. Longer than any board meeting, any negotiation, any business crisis. Because for the first time in 11 years, something mattered more than his company. Someone mattered more than his ambition. When my response finally came, it was 4 words that confirmed everything and destroyed him. He's not your son. I typed that lie with shaking hands. It was the first time I had ever lied about Miles' paternity. But what was Julian going to do? Demand a paternity test? Show up at my door? The man who walked away without a backward glance didn't deserve the truth. He didn't deserve access to the beautiful life we had built from his rejection. But I should have known better. I should have remembered that Julian Westwood didn't become a billionaire CEO by accepting defeat. 3 days later, he showed up at my door. The thunderstorm rolled in fast that evening, turning Boston's autumn night into something dramatic and ominous. I had just gotten Miles settled in bed, though at 11 he protested he was too old for bedtimes, when the doorbell rang. It was 9:47. Too late for deliveries. Too late for neighbors. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Some part of me had been expecting this. Had known that Julian wouldn't just accept my lie and disappear. He stood on my porch, rain-soaked despite the expensive umbrella collapsed at his side. He looked older than his photos suggested. Silver threaded through his dark hair. Lines around his eyes spoke of stress and sleepless nights. But he still had those devastating hazel eyes. Still carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. You came anyway. I didn't move from the doorway. I had to. Julian's voice was quiet, almost pleading. Natalie, please. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I kept my voice low, aware that Miles was upstairs. You need to leave. He's my son. I know he is. You can't lie to me about this. I can do whatever I want. You gave up any rights you had when you walked away 11 years ago. I didn't know. Julian took a step closer. If I had known you were pregnant, if I had known about him, everything would have been different. Would it? I challenged him. Would you have stayed? Given up Tokyo and Adriana and your precious empire? Or would you have suggested I get rid of the complications so you could pursue your ambitions unencumbered? Julian flinched like I'd slapped him. Is that really what you think of me? That's what I know of you. You're the one who told me my career was meaningless. That I was settling for mediocrity. That you needed someone who matched your ambition. Those were your exact words, Julian. So yes, I made a choice. I chose to protect my child from someone who measured people's value in dollar signs and networking opportunities. I was wrong. Julian's voice cracked. About all of it. I was 26 years old and terrified and measuring success by all the wrong metrics. I thought ambition and love were mutually exclusive. I thought providing financially was the only thing that mattered. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. I crossed my arms, not softening. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I have no right to ask. But please, Natalie. Please let me meet him. Let me try to be the father I should have been. And when the novelty wears off. When being a parent turns out to be harder than boardroom negotiations. When Miles needs you to show up for art shows and school events instead of closing billion-dollar deals. What happens then, Julian? I won't abandon him. I swear to you. You already did abandon him. You just didn't know he existed. The abandonment happened 11 years ago when you chose everything else over the life we could have built together. Thunder cracked overhead, punctuating my words. Rain poured down harder, drumming against the porch roof. Julian stood there soaking wet, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. Even his expensive suit couldn't hide the desperation in his eyes. Let me try. His voice was barely audible over the rain. Let me prove I've changed. I'm not asking to be his father overnight. I'm asking for a chance to know him. To maybe, eventually, earn a place in his life. And if he doesn't want you? If he's perfectly happy with the family we've built? Then I'll respect that. But don't make that choice for him, Natalie. Let him decide. I closed my eyes, feeling the impossible weight of this decision. Julian was right about one thing. Miles deserved the chance to make his own choice. But I also knew my son. Knew his tender heart. Knew how much he had wondered about his father despite his brave words about our family being enough. If Julian came into his life and hurt him, I would never forgive myself. But if I kept them apart and Miles found out later, would he resent me for making that choice for him? I need time to think. I finally said. Of course. Take all the time you need. And Julian? I opened my eyes, fixing him with a look that carried 11 years of strength and survival. I need you to understand something. Miles is an extraordinary child. He's kind and creative and emotionally intelligent beyond his years. But he's also sensitive. He feels things deeply. If you come into his life and hurt him, I will make you regret it in ways your billion-dollar lawyers can't protect you from. I believe you. Julian held my gaze steadily. Good. Now leave. I'll contact you when I've decided. Julian nodded and turned to go. He made it 3 steps before he turned back. Natalie? What? I'm sorry. For everything I said 11 years ago. For walking away. For being too blind to see that what we had was worth more than any career opportunity. I was wrong about you, about us, about what matters. And I've spent 11 years paying for that mistake. Sorry doesn't fix the past. But I heard the sincerity in his voice, and something in my chest twisted painfully. I know. But I needed you to hear it anyway. After Julian left, I stood at Miles' bedroom door watching my son sleep. His dark hair fell across his forehead. His face, so much like his father's, was peaceful in sleep. One arm was wrapped around a stuffed elephant I'd given him when he was 3. My baby. My entire world. Tomorrow I would have a conversation that might change both our lives. I would tell him the truth about his father. Give him the choice about whether to meet this stranger who shared his DNA. Whatever Miles decided, I would support him. That's what mothers did. That's what love meant. Unlike ambition, love didn't come with conditions or strategic planning. It just existed, constant and unwavering, ready to catch you when you fell and celebrate you when you soared. The next morning, I made Miles his favorite breakfast. Blueberry pancakes with maple syrup and fresh strawberries arranged in a smiley face on top. He came downstairs in his pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction, and immediately stopped in the kitchen doorway. You made the special pancakes. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. What's going on? Am I in trouble? Did I forget something important? No, sweetheart. I gestured to his chair. Come sit. We need to talk about something important. Miles slid into his seat slowly, his analytical mind clearly working through possibilities. You're freaking me out a little bit, Mom. Are you sick? Is something wrong? I'm not sick. Nothing's wrong exactly. But I need to tell you something about your father. The words hung in the air between us. Miles didn't move, didn't speak. He just waited with the patience that always amazed me in someone so young. His eyes, Julian's eyes, focused on me with complete attention. Your father didn't know about you. I began carefully. When he and I separated 11 years ago, I had just found out I was pregnant. I chose not to tell him. Why? Miles' question was simple, direct, without judgment. Because he had made it very clear that the life I wanted, the life we would have had together, wasn't enough for him. He chose his career over our relationship. He moved across the country for a job and married someone else. And I was afraid that if I told him about you, he might see you as a complication to his plans. As something inconvenient. Miles absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful. So he doesn't know I exist. He didn't know. Past tense. I took a breath. He found your YouTube channel a few days ago. He saw the thumbnails. He recognized himself in your face. I watched understanding dawn on my son's face. Oh. His voice was very small. He wants to meet you. He's in Boston. He came here asking for the chance to know you. Miles was quiet for a long moment. He picked up his fork and cut into his pancakes but didn't eat. He just moved the pieces around his plate, thinking. Finally, he looked up at me. Do you want me to meet him? This isn't about what I want. This is about what you want. Mom. Miles put down his fork. Everything you've done for 11 years has been about protecting me. So I'm asking you. Do you think I should meet him? I looked at my son, this extraordinary boy I had raised alone, and chose honesty. I don't know. Part of me wants to protect you from potential disappointment. Your father wasn't a kind person when he left. He said cruel things about my career, about the life I chose. Part of me thinks you deserve the chance to make your own decision about him. And part of me is terrified that he'll hurt you the way he hurt me. What's he like? Miles asked. I thought about Julian. The young man I had loved with my whole heart and the stranger he had become. He was brilliant. Ambitious. Driven. He had this way of seeing problems and solving them that was remarkable. But he was also cold. Calculating. Willing to walk away from love for career advancement. Willing to measure people's value by what they could offer him professionally. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I don't know who he is now. People change. Or they don't. It's been 11 years. He might be completely different. Or he might be exactly the same person who walked away. Is he a good person? Miles asked quietly. The question stopped me. Was Julian a good person? He had been cruel to me. He had chosen ambition over love. But he had also seemed genuinely broken standing on my porch last night. Genuinely remorseful. I think he was a person who made terrible choices when he was young. Whether he's learned from those choices, I honestly can't say. Miles nodded slowly. Did he know about me and choose not to be involved? Or did he really not know? He really didn't know. I made sure of that. Then it's not really fair to judge him for not being here, is it? Miles observed with wisdom that shouldn't fit in an 11-year-old. I mean, you made the choice to keep us apart. He didn't choose to leave me. He chose to leave you. The observation hit me like a physical blow. You're absolutely right. But Mom, he did choose to leave you. And you're the most amazing person I know. So either he's changed a lot since then, or he's still the kind of person who walks away from amazing things. Both of those things can be true. I said softly. Miles finally took a bite of his pancakes. Can I think about it? Of course. And Miles? If you decide you want to meet him, I'll be there every second. I'm not letting you do this alone. Then I think, Miles paused, his expression serious, I think I want to meet him. Just once. Just to see what he's like. To see if he's someone worth knowing. That's very mature of you. Will it make you sad? If I meet him? The question made my heart ache. No, sweetheart. This is your decision. Your father. Your choice. My feelings don't matter here. Your feelings always matter. Miles reached across the table and took my hand. You've been both parents to me for 11 years. You've been everything. So if this is too hard for you, I don't have to meet him. I squeezed his hand, fighting back tears. I'm okay. I promise. And Miles? No matter what happens with your father, nothing changes between us. You're still my son. I'm still your mom. We're still a team. The best team. Miles smiled. So when do I meet him? How about Saturday? Somewhere public. Somewhere you feel safe. The public garden. Miles suggested. Near the pond. That's always been my favorite place. The public garden it is. If you've ever made an impossible choice to protect someone you love, you know how I felt in that moment. If you've ever had to let go of control and trust that the person you've protected for years is strong enough to handle the truth, drop a comment and tell me about it. Because preparing to introduce Miles to Julian was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see how this meeting changes everything. Because what happens next, the first conversation between father and son, will either heal this broken family or shatter it beyond repair. I texted Julian with the details. Saturday, 11 a.m., Boston Public Garden, near the pond. His response came within seconds. Thank you, Natalie. I won't let him down. I promise you, I won't let him down. I didn't respond. Words were easy. Actions were what mattered. Julian had 11 years of absence to make up for. A single meeting wouldn't change that. But it was a start. And for Miles' sake, I had to give him this chance. The days leading up to Saturday were strange. Miles went about his normal routine. School, homework, editing videos, working on art projects. But I caught him staring at himself in mirrors more than usual. Looking for his father in his own reflection. Wondering what it would be like to meet the person whose DNA he carried but whose presence he had never known. Tuesday evening, I found him in the bathroom examining his eyes in the mirror. Do I really look like him? Miles asked when he noticed me watching. Yes. You have his eyes exactly. The same color, the same shape. His bone structure too. What else did I get from him? His analytical mind. His problem-solving approach. The way you break down complex ideas into simple steps. That's all him. What did I get from you? Miles turned to face me, and I saw vulnerability in his expression. Everything else. Your kindness. Your empathy. Your emotional intelligence. Your creativity. Your values. All of that is from me, from us, from the life we've built together. Good. Miles said firmly. Because I like who I am. And most of who I am came from you. Thursday night, Julian texted me. Can I bring anything on Saturday? Something for Miles. I don't want to show up empty-handed. I typed back. Just bring yourself. And be honest. That's all he needs. Another text came through immediately. I'm terrified, Natalie. What if he hates me? What if he takes one look at me and decides I'm not worth knowing? I stared at my phone for a long moment. Part of me wanted to let Julian suffer in his fear. But another part, the part that remembered loving him, felt compelled to respond. Be yourself. Be honest about your mistakes. Don't make promises you can't keep. Miles is incredibly perceptive. He'll see through any act. Just show up and let him make his own judgment. Thank you. Julian's response was simple, but I could feel the emotion behind it. Saturday morning arrived with perfect autumn weather. Crisp but not cold. Sunny with a gentle breeze that made the leaves dance on the trees. Miles changed his outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and his favorite hoodie. The one that said "Create Kindness" across the front in faded letters. He stood in front of his mirror, adjusting his hair, then messing it up again, then smoothing it down. You look perfect. I assured him from his doorway. I'm nervous. He admitted, turning to face me. Is that weird? It's completely normal. I'm nervous too. What if he doesn't like me? The question broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Sweetheart, he's going to love you. You're brilliant and kind and creative. Any parent would be proud to call you their son. But what if the reason he left you is because he doesn't like people like us? People who care about helping others more than making money. People who think feelings matter more than achievements. I crossed the room and pulled Miles into a hug. Then he doesn't deserve you. And we'll know that. And we'll come home and our life will go on exactly as it has been. You don't owe him anything. This meeting is just information gathering. You're deciding if he's someone worth having in your life, not the other way around. Okay. Miles took a deep breath. I'm ready. We drove to the public garden in silence. I kept glancing at Miles in the rearview mirror. He stared out the window, his expression thoughtful, his hands fidgeting with the strings of his hoodie. What was going through his mind? Was he imagining his father? Creating expectations? Hoping for something I couldn't guarantee? The garden was beautiful in October. Trees blazed with orange and red and gold. The pond reflected the blue sky like a mirror. Families walked the paths. Couples sat on benches. Dog walkers and joggers and tourists with cameras. Normal life happening all around us as we walked toward what might change our lives forever. And there, standing near the bridge over the pond, was Julian Westwood. He stood when he saw us approaching. I watched recognition flash across his face. Not just recognition of Miles from the videos, but the visceral shock of seeing his own features reflected in a living, breathing child standing in front of him. Miles stopped walking about 10 feet away. For a long moment, father and son just stared at each other. Two people who shared everything genetically and nothing experientially. Two strangers connected by biology and separated by 11 years of absence. The resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes. Same bone structure. Same way of standing with weight slightly on the left foot. Same slight tilt of the head when observing something carefully. Hi. Miles said finally. His voice was steady despite his nervousness. Hi. Julian's voice was rough with emotion. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Mom said you wanted to talk. I did. I do. Julian glanced at me, then back to Miles. I wanted to meet you. To apologize for not being in your life. To tell you that I didn't know you existed, but that's not an excuse for the choices I made that led to me not being there. Miles studied Julian with the same analytical gaze he used when examining a complicated art piece. Mom told me you left her for a job in Tokyo. I did. And another woman? Julian flinched. Yes. Do you love her? The directness of the question seemed to catch Julian off guard. No. I married her for the wrong reasons. Business reasons. Social reasons. We divorced 3 years ago. Why did you marry someone you didn't love? Because I thought career success and social connections mattered more than love. I thought building an empire was more important than building a life. I was wrong. Miles nodded slowly, processing this. Mom says you work with technology. What kind? Julian seemed grateful for the slightly less intense question. We develop software. Solutions for businesses. Systems that help companies operate more efficiently, connect with their customers better, manage their data more securely. That sounds kind of boring. Miles said with the brutal honesty only 11-year-olds can deliver. Julian laughed. The sound seemed to surprise him. It can be very boring sometimes. What you do is much more interesting. I've watched a lot of your videos. Actually, I've watched all of them. From the very first Worry Stones when you were 7 to your latest video about using art to process difficult emotions. Miles' face lit up the way it always did when someone genuinely engaged with his passion. You watched all of them? Even the really old ones? Especially the really old ones. Julian's voice was soft. The Worry Stones video made me cry. Why? Because I watched you, this 7-year-old kid, teach other children how to manage anxiety through creativity. How to take something as simple as a painted rock and turn it into a tool for emotional regulation. And I realized that you understood more about emotional intelligence at 7 than I've understood in my entire life. Do you go to therapy? Miles asked. The question clearly caught Julian off guard again. Yes. I started a few weeks ago. After I found your channel. After I realized how much I'd missed. How broken my priorities were. That's good. Mom says therapy is important. She says we all need help processing our stuff. That trying to handle everything alone just makes us sick. Your mom is very wise. I know. Miles said simply. She's the best person I've ever known. I watched this exchange from a bench about 20 feet away. Close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give them space. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. Julian asked questions about Miles' art projects. Miles explained his creative process, his inspiration, his goals for the channel. They discovered shared interests in problem-solving and systems thinking. They found common ground in analytical approaches to complex problems. But there was also wariness. Miles didn't fully relax. He kept his distance physically. His questions became more pointed. Why did you leave Mom? What exactly did you say to her? Do you regret it? Julian answered honestly. Sometimes painfully so. He admitted he'd been selfish and cruel. That he'd said terrible things about my career. That he'd valued the wrong things. That seeing Miles' videos had forced him to confront what he'd missed, what he'd thrown away, what really mattered in life. They talked for nearly an hour. Then Miles asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why do you want to know me now? Is it because you feel guilty about leaving Mom? Or because you actually want to be my dad? Julian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a rawness I'd never heard from him. I think it's both. I feel tremendous guilt for not being there. For the choices I made that led to me missing your entire life. But Miles, watching your videos, seeing the person you've become, I also feel something else. Pride. Curiosity. A genuine desire to know you. Not because of obligation or guilt, but because you seem like an extraordinary person I'd want to know even if you weren't my son. That's a good answer. Miles said. Very honest. I'm trying to be. Mom says actions matter more than words. So what actions are you going to take? Are you going to try to be my dad? Or are you just going to watch my videos from far away and feel proud of yourself without actually doing anything? The challenge in Miles' voice made my heart swell with pride. This was my son. Strong. Direct. Unwilling to accept empty promises. Julian met Miles' gaze steadily. I want to try to be part of your life. If you'll let me. I'm not asking to replace the family you have or to suddenly be called dad after being absent for 11 years. I'm asking if maybe we could get to know each other. Slowly. On your terms. At your pace. And if it gets weird. If I decide I don't want you around. Then you can stop anytime. No pressure. No guilt. No obligation. You hold all the power here, Miles. Okay. Miles stood up. I think I'm done for today. It was nice to meet you. It was amazing to meet you. Julian stood as well. For a moment I thought he might try to hug Miles. Instead, he held out his hand. Miles looked at the offered hand for a moment, then shook it. The gesture was formal, careful, but it was contact. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for giving me a chance. As we walked back to the car, Miles was quiet. I didn't push him to talk. Just let him process in his own time. We were almost home when he finally spoke. He seems okay. Miles said carefully. Kind of sad, but okay. How do you feel about meeting him? I don't know yet. He seemed actually interested in my stuff. Not just pretending to care. He asked real questions, not just the obvious ones. But I kept thinking about how he hurt you. About the things he said. And it made it hard to like him completely. You don't have to like him. I said gently. You don't owe him anything, sweetheart. But he's my dad. Biologically. Biology doesn't create obligation. You get to decide what kind of relationship you want with him, if any. Can I keep thinking about it? Take all the time you need. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Julian didn't push. He didn't show up unannounced at our house. He didn't demand more time with Miles. He didn't act entitled to a relationship just because of biology. Instead, he sent occasional emails. Always through me. Always respectful of the boundaries I'd set. Always asking permission before any contact. The first email came 3 days after their meeting. Natalie, I saw that Miles posted a new video about using recycled glass to create mosaics. I had a question about his technique, about how he gets the glass to adhere without traditional grout. Would he be interested in a brief video chat to discuss it? No pressure. Only if he wants to. I showed the email to Miles. He thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, okay. I can talk to him about that. It's actually a pretty interesting technical challenge. They video chatted for 20 minutes. I stayed in the room, not hiding my presence, making it clear I was monitoring. Julian asked genuine questions about the mosaic technique, about Miles' creative process, about where he found his materials. Miles answered enthusiastically, warming to the topic. At the end, Julian said, "Thank you for your time. This was really helpful. And Miles, you're incredibly talented." "Thanks." Miles said, a small smile on his face. "Maybe we can talk again sometime. I'd like that very much." A week later, a package arrived. No return address, but I recognized Julian's handwriting on the label. Inside were 3 books about advanced mosaic techniques, all from independent artists around the world. The note was simple. "Miles, I thought you might find these interesting. No obligation to read them or acknowledge them. Just wanted to share. J." Miles spent the entire weekend absorbed in those books, taking notes, sketching ideas. He's actually pretty thoughtful. Miles said on Sunday evening. These books are exactly the kind of thing I've been looking for. Like he really paid attention to what I care about. That's good. I said carefully. Is it weird that I kind of want to talk to him again? It's not weird at all, sweetheart. He's your father. It's natural to be curious. They video chatted twice more over the next 3 weeks. Conversations about art, about problem solving, about how Miles structured his videos for maximum educational impact. Julian never pushed for personal information. Never demanded to be called Dad. Never overstepped. He just showed up when Miles wanted to talk and listened with genuine interest. And something else was happening. Something I didn't want to acknowledge. Every time I coordinated these calls, every brief conversation I had with Julian, I felt something shift inside me. The anger was still there, solid and real. The hurt hadn't disappeared. But underneath those feelings, buried deep, was something else. Something that felt dangerously like the connection we'd once shared. The way Julian asked about my work now. "Tell me about your practice, Natalie. What kind of cases are you working on?" His questions weren't perfunctory. He actually listened to my answers, asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested in the healing work I did with traumatized children. The way his eyes lit up when discussing Miles. He's extraordinary, Natalie. The way he thinks, the way he connects with his audience, the emotional intelligence he shows. You did that. You raised him to be this incredible human being. The way he'd changed. Not performatively, not for show, but genuinely. 6 weeks after discovering Miles, Julian made an announcement that shocked the tech world. He was stepping down as CEO of Westwood Technologies. Not retiring, but transitioning to a chairman role. Removing himself from day-to-day operations. Making space in his life for other priorities. The business press speculated wildly. Was he sick? Was there a scandal? Was the company in trouble? But Julian's official statement was simple. After 25 years of prioritizing career over everything else, I'm restructuring my life to focus on what truly matters. Family. Relationships. Making a positive impact beyond profit margins. 2 weeks after that, he announced the Westwood Foundation. $750 million dedicated to art therapy programs for trauma survivors and educational support for single-parent families. The Foundation's mission statement could have been written about me and Miles. We believe that healing happens through creativity. That single parents are heroes who deserve support, not judgment. That children's emotional wellness matters as much as their academic achievement. I read the announcement alone in my office and cried. Not because of the money, though that would help countless families like ours had been. But because Julian had listened. He'd heard what mattered to me and built something meaningful around those values. Actions, not words. Miles noticed the changes too. Mom, did you see what Julian did? He never called him Dad, always Julian. He gave away almost $1 billion to help kids like the ones you work with. I saw. That's a lot of money. Miles was quiet for a moment. Do you think people can really change? Like fundamentally change who they are? I think people can change their priorities. Their behaviors. Their choices. Whether that changes who they fundamentally are, I don't know. Do you think Julian has changed? I looked at my son, choosing my words carefully. I think he's trying very hard to change. Whether that change is permanent or temporary, only time will tell. But Miles, the effort matters. The fact that he's willing to give up everything he spent 25 years building, that says something. What does it say? That maybe he finally understands what he lost. What really matters. 6 weeks after their first meeting, Miles made a request that stopped my heart. Mom, there's an art therapy conference in New York next month. For kids who've experienced trauma. They're looking for youth presenters to share their techniques. I want to apply, but it says participants need a parental guardian to attend. He paused, not quite meeting my eyes. Would it be okay if I asked Julian to come with us? Or instead of you if you can't take time off work? My first instinct was to say no. To keep that boundary firm. To protect the space Miles and I had always shared. But I forced myself to think past my own feelings. Do you want him there? I think so. I've been working on this presentation about using art to process grief. About the sculpture I made for Grandma. And Julian has been really helpful when I talk through my ideas. He asks good questions that make me think differently. Plus, Miles finally looked at me, you've been to 100 of these things with me. Maybe it would be good for him to do something dad-like. To see if he can actually show up for the boring parts, not just the easy conversations. That's very wise thinking. So is it okay? Of course it's okay. This is your choice, Miles. Your relationship with him. I support whatever you decide. Miles composed the email to Julian right there at the kitchen table. Hi Julian. There's an art therapy conference in New York on November 15th. I'm applying to be a youth presenter. It's about using creative expression to process grief and trauma. If I get accepted, would you want to come? As my parental guardian. No pressure if you're busy. Miles. Julian's response came within 5 minutes. Miles, I would be honored. Thank you for inviting me. I'll clear my entire schedule. Let me know as soon as you hear back about your application. And Miles, regardless of whether you're accepted, I'm proud of you for applying. Julian. He got accepted 2 weeks later. The conference organizers were thrilled to have someone with his platform and reach. Your submission was exceptional, the director wrote. We'd love to have you present in our youth track. Your perspective on transforming grief through creativity will be invaluable for our attendees. Miles was nervous in a way I rarely saw him. This is different from my videos, he said the night before we left for New York. In videos, I can edit. I can do multiple takes. This is live. What if I mess up? What if I forget what I want to say? You're going to be amazing. I assured him. You know this material inside and out. You've lived it. Just speak from your heart. The morning of the conference, we took the train to New York. Miles was quieter than usual, reviewing his notes, fidgeting with his phone. Julian met us at Grand Central Station. I almost didn't recognize him at first. He wore jeans and a sweater instead of his usual designer suits. He looked younger somehow. Less CEO, more approachable. More like the man I'd fallen in love with 11 years ago. You came. Miles said, relief obvious in his voice. I said I would. Julian smiled. I'm honored you invited me. I have to present at 2 p.m. Miles launched into nervous chatter. It's a 20-minute presentation with 10 minutes for questions. I'm in the youth track, which means my audience will be mostly teenagers and young adults who've experienced trauma. I'm going to talk about the sculpture I made for Grandma, about how creating something physical helped me process losing her. That sounds powerful. Julian said. I'm looking forward to hearing it. The conference was held in a hotel near Times Square. Hundreds of art therapists, social workers, educators, and youth advocates filled the halls. Miles' presentation was in a smaller breakout room, but it was packed. Nearly 80 people came to hear an 11-year-old talk about grief and creativity. I sat in the back row with Julian. Watching our son stand at the front of the room, so small behind the podium, but so composed. He started by showing photos of the sculpture he'd made after my mother died. A mixed media piece incorporating her favorite colors, textures that reminded him of her, objects that held memories. Then he walked the audience through his process. Not just the technical aspects, but the emotional journey. I couldn't talk about how sad I was. Miles' voice was steady but vulnerable. The words wouldn't come out. Everything felt stuck inside me, this huge heavy thing I couldn't name or explain. My mom, he gestured to me in the back row, she's an art therapist. She knows that sometimes feelings are too big for words. So she showed me that I could put those feelings into art instead. He showed slides of his process. Sketches. Failed attempts. The gradual evolution of the sculpture. And here's what I learned. Creating something with my hands, something physical and real, helped me understand what I was feeling. Every time I added a piece to the sculpture, it was like releasing a little bit of the grief. Like giving it somewhere to go outside of my body. The sculpture isn't sad, even though it's about loss. Miles showed the final image. It's beautiful. It's full of color and light and memory. Because that's what I wanted to remember about my grandma. Not the ending, but everything that came before. The art let me choose what to hold on to. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. The question and answer session ran over time because so many people wanted to know more about his technique, his philosophy, his recommendations for others processing grief. Miles answered every question with thoughtfulness and maturity that made my heart burst with pride. Afterward, other youth presenters surrounded him. Teenagers and young adults who'd experienced trauma, sharing their own stories, asking for advice, wanting to collaborate. Miles was in his element, connecting with peers, building community. And Julian stood back, watching with tears in his eyes. "He's extraordinary," Julian said quietly beside me. "He is. You did that, Natalie. You raised him to be this confident, this emotionally intelligent, this capable of turning pain into purpose." We were quiet for a moment, watching Miles laugh with a group of teenagers, all of them bonding over shared experiences and creative expression. "I've been in therapy," Julian said suddenly. "For times a week since I stepped down as CEO. Working through why I made the choices I made. Why I valued the things I valued." "That's good." I kept my eyes on Miles. "My therapist asked me what I want my legacy to be. And I realized I don't want it to be Westwood Technologies or business deals or the money I made. I want it to be that I was a good father. Eventually. If Miles lets me. That's up to him." "I know." Julian paused. "And Natalie, I also want to try to earn something else. Your forgiveness. Not just for Miles' sake. For you." I turned to look at him then. "Julian. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I said to you was unforgivable. But watching those videos, seeing what you built, who you became, who you raised Miles to be, I realized something. I didn't just lose a girlfriend 11 years ago. I lost the love of my life. And I'd give anything to try to earn that back. If you'd let me." My breath caught. I looked at this man who had shattered my heart, who had spent the last 3 months painstakingly proving he'd changed, and I felt something crack open inside me. "I'm not ready for that," I said honestly. "I know. But maybe." I took a breath. "Maybe we could start with coffee. Sometime. When you're in Boston." Julian's face lit up with hope I hadn't seen in years. "I'd like that very much." 3 months later, coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into long walks through Boston Common, leaves crunching under our feet as autumn deepened into winter. Long walks had turned into late-night conversations about everything. Our past. Our mistakes. What we wished we'd done differently. What we hoped for the future. And slowly, carefully, something began to build between us. Not the passionate, reckless love of our 20s. But something deeper. Something earned through pain and growth and the hard work of becoming better people. Miles watched this development with the wisdom of someone who understood that love was complicated. One evening after Julian left from dinner, Miles found me in the kitchen washing dishes with a smile on my face. "Are you happy, Mom?" "I think I might be. Eventually. Then I'm okay with this," Miles said. "With you and Julian." "But Mom." "Yeah. Make him work for it. Don't make it easy. Because you deserve someone who knows exactly how lucky they are to have you." I laughed. "I will." "Good. Because Julian seems like he's changed, but people can slip back into old patterns. So he needs to keep proving it." "When did you get so wise about relationships?" "I learned from watching you. You never settled. You never accepted less than you deserved. You taught me that. Then everything changed. Again." It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was in a therapy session with a client when my phone started buzzing incessantly. Text after text. Email after email. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway, opening my phone to find my screen filled with notifications. My colleague Sophie had texted. "Natalie, check page 6. I'm so sorry." With shaking hands, I opened the gossip site. The headline made my blood run cold. Tech billionaire Julian Westwood's secret son. YouTube star Miles Harper is the love child Westwood never knew existed. Below the headline were side-by-side photos. Julian at some business event. Miles from one of his video thumbnails. The resemblance was undeniable, unmistakable, damning. The article detailed everything. Julian's relationship with me 11 years ago. His marriage to Adriana Takahashi. Their divorce. My career at Boston University. Miles' YouTube success with 9 million subscribers. The recent meetings between father and son. Someone had photographed us. At the conference in New York. At restaurants in Boston. At the public garden. Images I'd never known existed now splashed across the internet for millions to see. My phone rang. Julian's name on the screen. Did you see it? His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I'm looking at it now. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I don't know how they found out. I've been so careful. I hired security. I made sure we weren't followed. You're a billionaire, Julian. You have photographers following you everywhere. Did you really think you could meet with us in public places and nobody would notice? I'll fix this. I'll make a statement. Control the narrative. Hire better security. I have lawyers, PR people, I can handle this. You can't fix this. I was shouting now, not caring that I was standing in the hallway of my practice. They know about him. His name, his channel, everything. Do you understand what you've done? I'll protect him. I have resources. We can issue takedown notices, threaten legal action against anyone who harasses him. He doesn't need your protection. He needs his privacy. He needs to be a normal 11-year-old kid, not the billionaire's secret son. Natalie, please. Let me help. Let me do something. You've done enough. I hung up and immediately called Miles' school. The principal assured me she would keep media away from campus. I called my neighbor and asked her to pick up Miles and bring him straight home. Then I drove like my life depended on it. When I got home, Miles was sitting on the couch with his laptop open, reading articles about himself. His face was pale, his expression stunned, his hands shaking slightly as he scrolled. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I crossed the room and pulled him into my arms. Mom, they're saying things about you. His voice was small, younger than 11. That you kept me secret to punish Julian. That you're after his money now. The comments on my videos are full of people asking about my dad, about whether I'm rich now, about whether my whole channel was fake. I know. We're going to handle this. How? Miles pulled back to look at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Everyone knows now. Everyone knows about Julian and about you and about why he wasn't in my life. How do we handle that? I sat beside him on the couch and wrapped my arm around his shoulders. We tell the truth. We control our own story. And we don't let other people define us. But that night, Miles' phone wouldn't stop ringing. Media outlets requesting interviews. Brands wanting to capitalize on the publicity, suddenly offering sponsorship deals they'd never mentioned before. Other YouTubers asking to collaborate, clearly hoping to ride the wave of attention. Entertainment lawyers offering to represent him. Producers pitching reality shows about our reunited family. I turned off his phone and put it in a drawer. Julian called 8 times. I ignored every call. We needed space. We needed to figure out how to protect Miles from the circus his father's world had created. The next day at school was worse. Miles came home quiet in a way that scared me more than tears would have. He walked through the door, dropped his backpack, and went straight to his room without a word. What happened? I followed him upstairs. Everyone knows. He sat on his bed, staring at nothing. Everyone was talking about it. About Julian and his billions. About whether I'm going to move to New York. About whether I'm rich now. About whether my videos were always just a publicity stunt. What did you tell them? Nothing. I just worked on my art projects and ignored them. But Mom, his voice cracked, even my friends were different. Like they're afraid to act normal around me now. Like I'm not just Miles anymore. Like I'm this thing that happened instead of a person. You're still you. I said fiercely. Nothing about you has changed. Everything has changed. Miles whispered. I used to be Miles who makes art to help people. Now I'm Miles the billionaire's secret son. The breaking point came 5 days later. Miles had an art show at school, a showcase he'd been preparing for all semester. His piece was a mixed media installation about healing through creativity, incorporating recycled materials and natural elements into a stunning sculpture that represented emotional transformation. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of work that showcased his talent and vision. But when the show opened, we were swarmed. Not by supportive parents and teachers admiring student work, but by reporters with cameras, talent managers with business cards, producers pitching reality shows, investors offering to fund Miles' education in exchange for equity in his brand. They surrounded us the moment we walked into the gallery. Mrs. Harper, how long have you known Julian Westwood wanted to reconnect? Did you demand a paternity test? Are you seeking child support? Miles, how does it feel to suddenly have a billionaire father? Will you continue your YouTube channel or pursue other opportunities? Have you been offered any endorsement deals? No comment. I said firmly, trying to create a physical barrier between them and Miles. We're not interested in interviews. Please respect our privacy. But the damage was done. Miles' artwork, which should have been the center of attention, was completely overshadowed. Other students and their families couldn't even get close to view the exhibits because of the media circus. The principal eventually had to call security to clear the gallery. On the drive home, Miles was silent. When we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke. Noah's parents said I can't come over anymore. What? Why? They said their family doesn't want to get involved in celebrity drama. Noah's been my best friend since kindergarten, Mom. And his parents won't let him hang out with me anymore because of Julian. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. That's not fair to you. That's their loss. Is it though? Or is it just going to keep happening? People treating me different, keeping their kids away from me, all because of who my dad is? When we got inside, Julian's car was parked across the street. I felt a surge of protective rage unlike anything I'd experienced before. Stay here. I told Miles. I marched across the street and knocked on Julian's window hard enough to make him jump. He rolled it down, looking exhausted and defeated, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. What are you doing here? I needed to see that Miles was okay. That you're both okay. He's not okay. His best friend's parents won't let him come over anymore because they don't want celebrity drama. Kids at school treat him like a circus attraction instead of a person. His phone won't stop ringing with vultures wanting to exploit him. His art show was ruined by reporters and producers. He's not okay, Julian. And it's your fault. I know. Julian's voice was barely a whisper. I know, and I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I know that too. Julian met my eyes. Please, Natalie. Let me help. Let me do something. Anything. Against every instinct screaming at me to send him away, I nodded. 5 minutes. And if he wants you to leave, you leave immediately. Julian followed me into the house. Miles was sitting at the kitchen table, his artwork from the show in front of him, but his expression was devastated. When he looked up and saw Julian, something shifted in his face. Not hope. Something harder. Angrier. Miles. Julian said softly. I'm so sorry. My son looked up at his father with tears streaming down his face. Everyone treats me different now. Like I'm not just Miles anymore. I'm the billionaire's son. I never wanted this for you. But you did want something, right? Miles' voice was steady despite his tears. You wanted to be my dad. After 11 years of not caring I existed. I didn't know you existed. If I had known, Julian started. You would have what? Miles cut him off. Left mom anyway. Chosen your company anyway. You said it yourself, when you broke up with her. You needed someone who matched your ambition. Well, my mom matched something better. She matched love. Julian looked like he'd been physically struck. You're absolutely right. I think you should leave. Miles stood up, tears still falling but his voice unwavering. I don't want a dad who brings cameras and tabloids and people who treat me like a thing instead of a person. I don't want a dad whose world destroys mine. Miles, please. Just let me explain. No. My son's voice rose. You said this was on my terms. On my timeline. Well, these are my terms. Leave. Don't call. Don't email. Don't watch my videos. Just go back to your life and let me have mine back. If that's what you want, I'll respect it. Julian's voice broke. But Miles, I need you to know something first. This is my fault. All of it. The media, the attention, the disruption to your life. Not your mom's, not yours. Mine. I should have been more careful. I should have protected you better. You should have stayed away. Miles said quietly. We were fine without you. We were happy. And now everything's ruined. Julian left with his shoulders slumped, looking more broken than I'd ever seen him. Part of me felt vindicated. This was exactly what I'd feared. This was why I'd kept Miles' existence a secret for 11 years. Julian's world destroyed everything it touched. But another part of me, a small part one didn't want to acknowledge, felt sorry for him. Because I could see that his remorse was real. That he was genuinely devastated by the harm he'd caused. 2 weeks passed. The media frenzy continued. Miles' subscriber count actually grew, people drawn by the drama, but Miles stopped posting videos. He stopped creating art. He went to school and came home and spent hours in his room doing nothing. The joy had gone out of him. I watched my brilliant, creative, joyful son withdraw into himself, and I hated Julian for causing this pain. But I also hated myself for allowing him back into our lives in the first place. Then something unexpected happened. I was making dinner when a news alert came across my phone. Julian Westwood steps down as CEO, announces major life changes. I clicked through to the article, my heart pounding. Julian had held a press conference that afternoon. The video was embedded in the article. I pressed play, and there he was, standing at a podium, looking directly into the camera. I'm here today to announce that I'm stepping down from all public-facing roles at Westwood Technologies, effective immediately. This decision has nothing to do with the company's performance and everything to do with my personal priorities. 2 weeks ago, the media revealed that I have an 11-year-old son I didn't know about. In the coverage that followed, my son's privacy was violated. His life was disrupted. He became a target for speculation and exploitation, all because of my public profile. Julian paused, his voice thick with emotion. I want to make something very clear. My son, Miles Harper, is an extraordinary young man. He's brilliant, kind, creative, and talented beyond measure. He built a YouTube channel with 9 million subscribers through his own merit, his own hard work, his own genuine heart. He didn't need my money or my name or my connections. In fact, he's explicitly asked me to stay out of his life because my presence causes him harm. Another pause. I'm honoring that request. I'm stepping back from public life. I'm restructuring everything so that my existence doesn't continue to hurt him. Additionally, I'm announcing the Westwood Foundation, which will focus on art therapy programs for trauma survivors and educational support for single-parent families. I'm donating $1 billion to this foundation as seed funding. My breath caught. $1 billion. To art therapy. To the work I dedicated my life to. Miles' mother, Dr. Natalie Harper, has spent her career healing children others dismissed. Julian continued. She raised an incredible son while building an impressive career and serving her community. She deserves recognition for that, not tabloid speculation. And the work she does, the work of healing through creativity, deserves support. Julian looked directly into the camera, and I could see the exhaustion and sincerity in his eyes. I made terrible choices 11 years ago. I walked away from a woman I loved because I prioritized ambition over everything else. I can't undo those choices. I can't get back the 11 years I missed with my son. But I can try to be better. Not for recognition or redemption, but because it's the right thing to do. To Miles, I'm sorry. I hope someday you'll believe that. To Natalie, thank you for raising him to be better than I ever was. The video ended. I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. Julian had given up everything. The company he'd sacrificed our relationship for. The position he'd spent 25 years building toward. The public life that had always mattered more than private happiness. Mom. I looked up to find Miles standing in the kitchen doorway. He'd clearly been watching over my shoulder. Did you see? I saw. Why would he do that? Miles' expression was complicated, confused. He gave up his whole company. Being CEO was everything to him. Maybe it's not anymore. I said quietly. Miles was silent for a long moment. Then he moved to the kitchen counter and pulled up his laptop. Before I could ask what he was doing, he started recording. Hi everyone, it's Miles. I know a lot of you have questions about the stuff in the news lately. About my dad. About why he wasn't in my life. About whether my channel was real or fake or some kind of publicity stunt. I want to talk about it because I don't want other people telling my story for me. I watched my son speak to his 9 million subscribers with the same honesty and maturity that made him special. A few weeks ago, I found out my biological father is Julian Westwood. He's a tech CEO, a billionaire, someone I'd never met. My mom raised me by herself because my dad didn't know I existed. That's not his fault. My mom made that choice to protect me, and I think it was the right choice. When my dad found out about me, he wanted to meet me. And I wanted to meet him too, because I've always wondered what he was like. We met a few times and he seemed okay. Kind of sad, but okay. He seemed actually interested in my work, in the things I care about. But then the media found out. And everything got crazy. People started treating me different. Not because I changed, but because they knew I had a billionaire dad. Kids at school acted weird. My best friend's parents didn't want me around anymore. Reporters showed up at my art show. It really, really hurt. Miles paused, gathering his thoughts. And I got angry at my dad for coming into my life and bringing all this attention. I told him to leave me alone. To go back to his life and let me have mine back. But today, my dad did something I didn't expect. He gave up his job. He stepped down from being CEO of his company. He's donating $1 billion to help kids like the ones my mom works with. All because being in the public eye was hurting me. And that made me think about something my mom always says. Actions matter more than words. Anybody can say sorry. But it takes real change to actually be sorry. Miles looked directly into the camera. I don't know if my dad and I are going to have a relationship. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive him for leaving my mom or for the chaos he brought into my life. But I know he's trying to change. And my mom taught me that people deserve chances to grow, especially when they're willing to sacrifice for that growth. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm going to keep making art. I'm going to keep being me. And maybe, eventually, I'll get to know my dad. Not because he's a billionaire or because I have to, but because he's trying to be better. And that's worth something. Miles ended the recording and uploaded it without editing, something he never did. Within minutes, the comments started flooding in. Supportive comments. Understanding comments. People praising his maturity and wisdom. That was very brave. I said. I learned from you. Miles replied. You always face things head on. What made you decide to do that? Because he gave up everything for me. Even though I told him to leave me alone, he's still trying to protect me. That means something, right? It means everything. Do you think he really changed? Or is this just another strategic move? I thought about Julian standing at that podium, publicly admitting his failures, walking away from everything he'd built. I think people can change. But real change takes time to prove. Words are easy. Sustained action is hard. So we wait and see. We wait and see. 6 weeks passed. The media frenzy died down as new scandals captured public attention. Miles' channel continued to grow, now at 10 million subscribers. He started filming again, slowly returning to the projects he loved. Noah's parents called to apologize, ashamed of their knee-jerk reaction, and invited Miles over. School returned to something resembling normal. Julian kept his distance, but I noticed small things. A donation to Miles' school art program, anonymous except I recognized the exact amount needed for new supplies. A scholarship established at my clinic in my mother's name, something that made me cry when I found out. Books arriving for Miles with no return address, always exactly the right ones for his current interests. Actions, not words. Sustained effort, not grand gestures. Then one Saturday morning, Miles came downstairs with his laptop and a determined expression. Mom, there's another art therapy conference. This one's in New York next month. It's specifically about youth mental health and creative expression. They want me to present again. He paused. It says participants need a parental guardian. Would it be okay if I asked Julian? Are you sure? I asked carefully. I've been thinking about what he said in that press conference. And what he did, giving up his company. That wasn't nothing. That was huge. Miles met my eyes. Want to give him another chance. Just a small one. To show up for something that matters. If he does, maybe we can try again. If he doesn't, then I'll know for sure. That's very wise. So is it okay? Of course it's okay. Miles sent the email that afternoon. Simple and direct. Julian, there's an art therapy conference in New York on December 10th. I'm presenting again. Would you want to come? As my parental guardian? I understand if you can't or don't want to. Miles. Julian's response came within minutes. Miles, I'll be there. Thank you for giving me another chance. I won't let you down. The day of the conference arrived cold and clear. We took the early train to New York. Miles was less nervous this time, more confident in his presentation skills. Julian met us at Grand Central again, still dressed casually, still looking more like the man I'd loved than the CEO he'd been. Thank you for coming. Miles said. Thank you for inviting me. Julian's voice was thick with emotion. I know I don't deserve another chance. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're willing to work for it. Miles said. My mom taught me that. Your mom is the wisest person I know. The conference was powerful. Miles presented his work on using art to process complex emotions, sharing techniques that other young people could use. He was brilliant, confident, compassionate. And Julian watched with pride radiating from every part of him. Afterward, as we walked through the city, Miles did something that made both Julian and me catch our breath. He reached out and took Julian's hand. Just for a moment. Just a brief connection. But it was everything. "Thanks for showing up," Miles said simply. "Thank you for letting me." Julian's voice broke. 3 months later, something shifted between Julian and me too. Our coffee dates had become a regular thing. Then dinners. Then long walks where we talked about everything. And slowly, I felt the walls I'd built around my heart begin to crack. One evening after Julian left from dinner, Miles found me in the kitchen with a smile I couldn't hide. "You're happy," he observed. "I think I am." "Good. You deserve to be happy." Miles hugged me. "And Mom? Julian's not perfect. But he's trying really hard. And I think he really loves you." "I think so too." "So are you going to give him a real chance? Not just coffee and dinners, but like, actual dating?" "Maybe. Eventually." "Good. Because he looks at you the way people in movies look at each other. Like you're the best thing he's ever seen." A year after Julian first saw those thumbnails, we gathered at my house for Miles' 12th birthday. Julian, me, Miles, and a few of Miles' closest friends. It wasn't a big celebration. Just pizza and cake and kids being kids. But it was real. It was ours. Later that night, after everyone had left and Miles had gone upstairs, Julian helped me clean up in the kitchen. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then he spoke. "Natalie, I need to tell you something." I turned to face him, dish towel in my hands. "I love you," Julian said. "I never stopped loving you. And I know I have no right to say that after everything I did, but it's true. You're it for me. You always were." My breath caught. "I'm not asking you to say it back," Julian continued. "I'm just asking you to know it. To believe it. And to maybe, someday, give me the chance to prove it for the rest of our lives." I looked at this man who had broken my heart and spent a year and a half painstakingly putting it back together, piece by piece, day by day. "I'm not ready to say it back yet." "I know. But Julian?" I took a step closer. "I'm getting there." His smile could have lit the entire city. 2 years after Julian first saw those thumbnails, he proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public spectacle. Just the three of us on a quiet Sunday morning in the kitchen where so much of our healing had happened. "Miles," Julian said, "I have a question to ask your mom. But I need your permission first." Miles looked up from his pancakes, his hazel eyes bright with understanding. "You want to marry her?" "I do. But only if you're okay with it." Miles pretended to think about it, dragging out the moment. "Will you promise to always show up? To always choose us, even when it's hard?" "I promise." "Will you promise to keep going to therapy and working on being better?" "I promise." "And will you promise to love my mom the way she deserves? With everything you have, no holding back, no measuring her worth by the wrong things?" Julian's voice was thick with emotion. "I promise. With everything I have." Miles nodded seriously. "Then yes. You can ask her." Julian turned to me, and I saw everything in his eyes. Regret for the past. Gratitude for the present. Hope for the future. "Natalie Harper, you are the love of my life. You're the strongest, most compassionate, most extraordinary woman I've ever known. You raised an incredible son when I was too blind to see what mattered. You built a career healing people when I was busy building an empire of nothing. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve and taught me what real success looks like. Will you marry me? I looked at this man who had broken me and been broken himself. Who had spent 2 years proving that change was possible. Who had chosen us, day after day, choice after choice. Yes. I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Miles whooped with joy. Julian kissed me with everything he had. 11 years of regret, 2 years of earning it back, and a lifetime of love ahead of us. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Boston Public Garden. The same place where Miles and Julian had first met. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. What had started as a tentative first meeting had transformed into something beautiful. Miles walked me down the aisle, pride radiating from every part of him. Julian cried through his vows. I cried through mine. And when the officiant pronounced us married, our family of 3 became official in every way that mattered. That night, Julian, Miles, and I stood on our balcony overlooking the city. Julian handed Miles a wrapped package. I have something for you. Miles opened it to find a framed photograph. The very first thumbnail from his YouTube channel. 7-year-old Miles, missing his front teeth, holding up his first worry stone creation. This is what brought me back to you. Julian said, his voice breaking. This face. These eyes. This heart. I saw myself in those thumbnails, but what I really saw was everything I'd been missing. Thank you for giving me the chance to be your dad. For real this time. Miles hugged his father. No longer tentative or formal, but full and genuine. Thanks for showing up. For real this time. Later, after Miles had gone to bed, Julian and I stood in that same spot. His arms wrapped around me, my head resting on his chest. Do you ever regret it? Julian asked quietly. Telling me about Miles. Letting me back in. You had a good life without me. I thought about this carefully. I had a good life. But this? This is better. Not because you're here, but because Miles has his father. Because you changed. Because our family is whole. I love you. Julian whispered into my hair. I love you too. And I meant it with my whole heart. 11 years ago, Julian Westwood had walked away from love for ambition. 2 years ago, he'd found his son in YouTube thumbnails and discovered what he'd lost. And now, he'd built something he never had before. A real life. A real family. Real love. Not the kind you achieve. The kind you earn. The kind you choose. The kind that chooses you back. Months later, Miles posted a video titled What I Learned About Second Chances. In it, he talked about forgiveness, transformation, and what it means to let people grow. He talked about his dad. Not the man who left, but the man who came back. Who changed. Who chose differently. He talked about his mom. The strongest person he knew, who taught him that love means giving people the chance to be better while protecting yourself enough to survive if they're not. And he talked about family. Not perfect people doing everything right, but imperfect people choosing each other anyway. The video went viral. Not for drama, but for hope. Because if Julian Westwood could change, if a man who'd chosen empire over love could learn to choose differently, then maybe anyone could. Maybe we're all just one thumbnail away from discovering what really matters. Maybe we're all just one choice away from becoming who we're meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, love is worth the risk. Always. Have you ever been given a second chance you didn't deserve? Have you ever forgiven someone who broke you? Would you let the person who hurt you back into your life if they truly changed? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because these are the questions we all face when the past comes knocking with a different future. If this story moved you, if you believe in transformation and real redemption, you need to subscribe for more stories about love, loss, and the courage to choose differently. Hit that like button if you think people can truly change. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Because here's the truth. Success isn't measured in dollars or subscribers or career achievements. It's measured in presence. In showing up. In the daily choice to be better than you were yesterday. Julian Westwood was worth billions, but he was impoverished in every way that counted until he lost everything and gained a son. Natalie Harper raised a boy alone, but she was rich beyond measure in love and strength and purpose. And Miles taught the world how to create art from broken pieces. Including the broken pieces of his own family. This is their story. But maybe it's yours too. Maybe you're the person who walked away and wants to come back. Maybe you're the person who was left behind and has to decide whether to forgive. Maybe you're the child caught in the middle, trying to figure out whether second chances are worth the risk. Whoever you are, whatever choice you're facing, remember this. Ambition without love is just expensive emptiness. Achievement without relationship is a hollow victory. Money without meaning is poverty in a designer suit. But transformation, real difficult sustained transformation, that's wealth beyond measure. Julian gave up his empire. Natalie gave up her anger. Miles gave up his certainty that his family was better without his father. And from those sacrifices, they built something new. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. The boy in those thumbnails became more than his father's face reflected back. He became the bridge that brought two people from their past into a better future. He became the teacher who showed millions of subscribers what really matters. He became proof that children of broken situations can build beautiful lives. Natalie became more than the woman who was left behind. She became the foundation that made everything else possible. The strength that protected and the grace that forgave. The mother who raised a boy so well that he could teach adults how to be better. And Julian became more than the billionaire who discovered he had a son. He became a man who learned that losing everything was the only way to gain what mattered. That stepping down was the only way to step up. That real power isn't in boardrooms but in showing up for your son's art show and being genuinely proud. This has been a story about thumbnails, truth, and the father who saw himself 11 years too late but just in time to become the man his son deserved. A story about a mother who built an empire of love and proved that the richest life is the one spent protecting and nurturing what matters most. A story about a boy who taught the world how to build things and ended up building a family from broken pieces. If you're facing an impossible choice about forgiveness, if you're wondering whether people can truly change, if you're protecting someone from a truth that might hurt them, remember this. Love isn't about perfect people or perfect situations. It's about imperfect people choosing each other anyway, day after day, layer by layer, building something real from the broken pieces of what could have been. Choose wisely what you sacrifice in pursuit of your dreams. Choose carefully who you walk away from. And choose bravely to believe that transformation is possible, even when it seems too late. Because sometimes the thumbnails tell a truth we've been running from. And sometimes facing that truth is the only way to become who we were meant to be. Next week I'm bringing you another story about impossible choices and second chances. About a woman who had to choose between the life she built and the love she lost. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single story. And until next time, remember that love is always worth the risk.